Hello, everyone. Bem-vindos ao English Legal Talks da Bilingual Minds. Esta é uma série gratuita em inglês em que abordaremos tópicos da atualidade do contexto legal. Ela foi criada pela Bilingual Minds para acompanhar o nosso conteúdo de inglês jurídico. Na primeira edição, vamos falar sobre deportações nos Estados Unidos, as últimas notícias e eventos recentes na atual administração Trump, dissecadas pelo nosso professor de inglês jurídico Fábio Schlichting, advogado empresarial. Eu sou Simon Banha, diretor de cursos da Bilingual Minds, especialista em gestão de educação, e juntos vamos apresentar o nosso primeiro English Legal Talk. O English Legal Talks é um conteúdo suplementar dos nossos cursos de inglês jurídico, e se você quiser se aprofundar mais sobre este e outros assuntos, siga os links que estão na descrição deste vídeo. Enjoy the content! Right. Now, we hear of many different types of cases, and some of the situations, at least the way they are reported, seem to be pretty radical. So I think a lot of people would have this question for you, Fabio. Can someone be deported without a trial or without a court hearing?
Simon, this is a very interesting question, if not the most important question, because when we see in the news, we see that people are, sent back to their own countries, to their homeland, and there are human rights complaints and all. Some of them were criminals, some were not. Look, something very important. Countries are sovereign, right? So they are entitled to keep these undocumented immigrants in their countries or not. They decide who stays and who does not, right? We Brazilians cannot tell Americans what they should do in terms of keeping immigrants or not. They decide on that.
Of course.
And there are situations in which these people can go back to their own countries, without undergoing all that process we mentioned before, right? The ICE catching them, going to court and all. It's basically two situations, right, Simon? There is the expedited removal and the reinstatement of removal. What is the expedited removal? That happens at the airports, seaports, right, like harbors and all, or when they are 100 miles of the land border, right? So people who get caught by the coyotes and people who get caught at the border of Texas, let's say, right? These people don't have to undergo all that process, right? It's more or less like if you compare that to criminal law, there is a crime right away. I can see a crime right here. I am a police officer. I can take you to jail. I don't have to wait, for a letter to go to your home, an invitation for you to go to court. I can take you right away to jail. Same thing with people who get caught at the borders, They can go straight back to their countries, If there's no document, all it says there you are from, let's say, Colombia, and you are here, in Texas, and there's no proof that you are here legally, you can be kicked back to your country right away. The way that is performed, right, goes according to executive orders of presidents, right? Maybe you could be kicked back to your country, right? Go back to the border of Mexico, or we'll take you to the airport. You're gonna be sent back to Colombia, take you to the capital of your own country by airport, and then your president has to pay for that. So the procedures for this, they change a lot. They vary a lot. All right. But that's one case when people get caught at borders, right, or airports, or seaports. When you try to enter the country without valid papers, I read this in the news last week, Simon. There was this American. He was already an American citizen. He had the green card, but he was born in Canada, right? So he was married in the States. He had kids and also American wife, if I'm not mistaken, and American kids born in the States. So he was not born in the States. He was born in Canada, but he's been in the States since 1980. Not very good with math, Simon. That's 40,
That's
40,
45 years.
45
Mm-hmm.
years, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
45 years. So, man, if you think about it, basically in his mind, it doesn't cross his mind that he's not
Mm-hmm.
American anymore because he's been there for so long, right?
Sure.
Then he went on vacation to Canada to see his parents. He tried to go back to the United States with his kids. The kids were allowed to enter the country, not him anymore, because if I'm not mistaken, he was involved with something to do with drug use in the past and some,
Mm-hmm.
other, different problems with the law, from the past. So he was not allowed in the United States, had to go back to Canada. I didn't see what happened after that, but many
Mm-hmm.
people think that if you have the green card, you're safe. Not anymore. Not anymore. Actually,
Wow.
we've never been
Mm-hmm.
100% guaranteed to be in the States, even with the green card. If you make this
Mm-hmm.
big
Mm-hmm.
crimes like drug trafficking and all, you can be kicked back to
Mm-hmm.
your country. The difference is you undergo the crimes in the American law. And after that,
Mm-hmm.
you get back to your country if you go, right? If you're not an American citizen, right, then you can be kicked back to your country. And then over there, they decide what to do with these crimes. So this has to do with all these international treaties, of
Mm-hmm.
international law. But basically, right, if you're trying to enter the States without valid papers, expired papers and all, you cannot enter the country. So this officer from the border can
Mm-hmm.
right away tell you can go back.
Mm-hmm.
So, and basically, if you are afraid of returning home too, right? So let's say you crossed the border of the United States, you came from Venezuela, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
and then, okay, so you get caught by someone over there, right? You can say, well, I'm afraid of going back to my country. I can be killed, or, my country is really poor for some reason, or there are political issues that, I'm afraid I'm going to face if I go back to my country, right? So you can ask for this very quick, credible fear, but without seeing the judge, these officers can also tell you to go back, right? So
Mm-hmm.
uh, many times people bring, possible, situations that could be asylum, but they're not. I can go, to the border of the states and say, well, I've been pursued by this, drug dealers in Sao Paulo, and now I want to enter the country. And let's say I've never lived in Sao Paulo in my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the guys can say, well, that's not really true. There's no reason to take this to, court. It's just a waste of time. Let's send him back to his country. Brazil is not at war. There's no
Mm-hmm.
reason for him to come here to the United States. So that's the expedited removal. There is the reinstatement of removal. There's a little difference here, Sam. If you were already deported once, and you try to come back to the States legally. Let's say you went to the States in 1994, that was the World Cup, you jumped into the field, you're caught, you were arrested, and then sent back to your countries. You could not enter the United States anymore. So you're persona non grata in the States, right? But
Mm-hmm.
still, you try to enter the States illegally by crossing the
Mm-hmm.
border. So let's say that you are already committing a crime. You're not welcome to the country anymore, and you are trying to enter the country illegally. It's basically just a matter of names, procedures, right, Simon? But it's more or less saying, well, you're not invited before, you're not allowed to come to the country, and you're trying to come here illegally. So it's all wrong,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? No
Absolutely.
reason to be
Yeah.
here,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Uh, Go
And
ahead. Mm-hmm.
and when the ICE, right, when the ICE restarts your old deportation order, right? So there is this, okay, you're in the States, okay, you're fine, you're trying to get the green card, right? But for some reason, the ICE notices, that some years ago, right, you had a deportation order that was not, for some reason, applied to your case in the States. It's been so long, you've never caught by anyone. When they see this old deportation, order, you can be kicked out of the country as well. You don't have to undergo a new procedure, a new legal procedure, because of
Mm-hmm.
course it's it takes time and money, to the country, to yourself. So you were already not welcome in the country. You're just lucky enough not to get caught by the ice, right? And the last situation for reinstatement removal is when you still ask for limited protections, right? But you did not go to a full trial, right? So, okay, so let's say I'm a woman, I was pregnant at the time, right? They were withholding that, right? So let's say the order was suspended for some reason, and then they waited for me, to deliver the baby and all. And then I went back to my family. And, it's been 2 years already, you know, ever since I went to court, to talk about my case. But then I get caught for some reason, I was supposed to go back, let's say. I did not,
Mm-hmm.
and then you don't go to trial anymore. You're sent back to your country because you did not respect the procedures. Same way that the American government has to respect the procedures. Let's say you have cancer, you're pregnant, and all. You have to respect the days to be there in court, right? If that was withheld for some reason, let's say you had to undergo your treatment of cancer and should go back, let's say on December 1st, but did not, that's also a reason for you not to wait, for them not to wait for the trial to end. You did not respect the procedures. I'm sorry, right? So you're entitled to go back to your own country.
Mm-hmm. So, these people without documents, do they have any legal rights? I mean, during these proceedings for deportation, what are they
Yeah,
allowed to do? What protections do they have?
Simon, now it's important to bring what was in the news, right? Many times, what we see is that, okay, they're like criminals and all. Okay, we hear sometimes, presidents saying that certain people were criminals, but when they say that, they're not saying that everyone is a criminal, right? So the first group that was caught, okay, was a group of criminals, right? They had some orders that had to be, taken into action, but since you're not your own homeland anymore, we did not know of that. But by
Mm-hmm.
contacting your government, we know that you're criminals, and then these people go back to their countries. But undocumented people can be so many different kinds of people, Simon. Let's say if your visa expires, you have a document, right? But it's expired. So what happens? You have to try to renew it. But the problem is you had enough time to renew it in the past and you did not. All right.
Right, yes.
Anyway,
Uh-huh.
this is just one specific case, but people in general who are undocumented, they have some legal rights, right? Like the right to notice, right? You have to get this notice to appear, which
Mm-hmm.
formalizes, the procedure saying, okay, there is this red light here. We think that you are an illegal immigrant. So we
Mm-hmm.
send this letter to you saying that you have to be in court at a specific date, right? So let's say that's a way of making it formal and tell you that, okay, you're not going to go to jail, or, there's no reason for that to happen because you have a stable job, you have your family and all, but you have to present yourself to court. Second, you have to have the right to a hearing. Of course, I mean, I'm talking about general cases, right? So, okay, let's say in my homeland, okay, I come from Syria, there's been this horrible war there, but for some reason I was waiting for some documents and the American government did not issue that to me yet. Okay, then by explaining that in a regular hearing, maybe you have the right to be in there, which probably is going to happen, considering that, countries that are at war, this is like an international agreement that people have the right, people who are considered refugees, they have the right to be
Sure.
in other people's countries, to survive, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you have to have the right to a hearing, right, if you're entitled to. Right to hire a lawyer. Well, that's, basically all over the world, right? The only problem is that in the States, there is no free lawyer for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, right, so they don't guarantee that like in Brazil they do, right? Not over there. right? But of course, there are so many different types of organizations, non-profit organizations in the States that bring, this help, this pro bono lawyers, who don't charge you, of course,
Mm-hmm.
right? But there are no free attorneys in the United States, right? They have to be at your own cost. But you have, the right to hire a lawyer in the United States. You also have the right to explain your case. That's not to the ICE officer. Man, what can an ICE officer do to you? Basically nothing. They're gonna ask you a few questions, of course, but who's gonna decide on that is the people who are in court, right? But you have the right to explain what happened to you, why you're there. Let's say your parents were legal immigrants, but you never got the American papers. That can happen too, because you live in a very far away town in the countryside, right? That's also a possibility. Um, you have the right to apply for asylum, right? When that's the case, of course, you have to get all those international conventions, to see if you are really tortured, you have the risk of being tortured or prosecuted or persecuted, sorry, in your homeland, right? You can also try to, get a stay in the United States because of asylum, right? You have the right to appeal, right? Of course, there is a decision. You can disagree with that, like any other situations, you go to the Court of Appeals, right? Of course, different names because you're talking about
Mm-hmm.
immigration, the process a little bit faster, but it's usually around 30 days, for the Board of Immigration Appeals. That's how you call it, right? The Board of Immigration Appeals decides on that and tries to review the decision of the judge, right? Telling you if you have the right to stay or if they go with the judge's decision. And of course, I'm sorry, you have to go back to your country, and then they keep, the same decision of the first judge. Um, you have also the right to credible fear screening, right? So those people in expedited removal, right, at the borders or
Mm-hmm.
ports, they can say that they are afraid to return, right? So they can get like a quick interview, say, I'm sorry, I'm really not gonna enter this ship and go back to my homeland in, Africa, let's say Angola, because there's been a war there, I don't know, or now it's been like a problem with the actual politician, like people from the Philippines, right? And then they're gonna say, well, I'm sorry, the war in Angola ended some years ago. You have to go back. Or in the Philippines, yeah, okay, we have been problems with politics right now, but you don't belong to any political organization, so why being afraid? You gotta go back.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you can ask for a credible fear. You can disagree to go back right away and ask for a second opinion of someone else. All right. And you have, of course, the right to be treated humanely, right? This is important, Simon. The difference between human and humane. We're all
Mm-hmm.
humans. We're all humans, right? But we have to be treated humanely, right? So
Mm-hmm.
human rights take care of humans, but to make sure that they are treated humanely, right? So even though you are in detention, let's say, right, you have to have your food, you have to have a restroom, take a shower, you should see your kids if they're somewhere around you, right? Sometimes that hasn't been respected, but we'll be talking about this maybe in another video, right? But all the human rights apply to these people who are undocumented in the United States. So you have so many rights, but the thing is,
Mm-hmm.
in the States, having a lawyer is not free, and if you don't speak the language, sometimes, of course, the Latin group is very united over there. So if you speak Spanish, you also have services in Spanish there that try to find you an attorney, right, who also speaks your language or with a translator. But if you do not, if people come from if these undocumented people come from countries where the language is very different, they don't know what their rights are, and I'm sorry, and they have no money. What's gonna happen to them, right? So the only way is to
Mm-hmm.
get a pro bono lawyer. They try to contact your home country to pay for the bill of the lawyer. There are no free lawyers in the United States. But basically, these are the main rights. If you think about it, it's basically human rights in general. right? The rights
Right.
of undocumented people.
Uh-huh. You mentioned the case of the Canadian-born bearer of a U.S. Green card who had gotten married in the United States and had American children, and that brings up the question: what happens of undocumented immigrants who have children born in the United States? What happens to those children? Because probably the undocumented parents might have to be deported according to law, but what happens to those children?
Mhm. Well, Simon, this is where that agency that I mentioned before, the Department of Health and Human Services, the DHS or HHS, uh, comes to work, right? Because here in Brazil, as I mentioned, we have Ministério Público that helps all these vulnerable people. In the States, they have the DHS or HHS, right?
Hmm.
Who are going to try to take care of these minors, you know? But still, the United States is a big country, we know, right? The number of undocumented people is very big. And especially now with this new administration, this topic is very relevant for many reasons, right? But
Hmm.
we cannot forget that kids, you know, they have to be protected by someone. They need adults around them, right? So many times the problems that I see, Simon, they're not legal problems. Of course, there are many legal problems too, but basically social problems too. Let's say these kids, right? Of course, the kid has to be breastfed, a baby, right? The mother is in a detention really close to, you know, to where the kid is. Why not letting the mother breastfeed the kid, you know, if that's the
Hmm.
case, right? And then, but that has to do with these agents, you know, has to do with the way these agents treat people, you know. Let's say maybe people in Texas, you know, are stricter than people in New York. These agents are stricter. So that has to
Hmm.
do with the agents who are there, you know, the time they're there, how long
Hmm.
you've been there, the reasons why you're there. But but kids, they're like, for example, the case that I mentioned to you, they were able to enter the country, right? They could go from Canada to the States,
Right.
but
Hmm.
how could they do that if they don't drive, right?
Hmm.
They need like a special permit to go from, you know, by bus or etc. So
Hmm.
it's very difficult to evaluate this, Simon. It has to do with the way people are treated, right? Of course, this separation brings a lot of problems to everyone, right? Like, let's say the kids maybe could be in the States and there's only one grandparent in the States who's very sick. They think this person is
Hmm.
going to be able to take care of the kids. Probably not. So, is it better for the kid to stay here in New York or go back, you know, go to Canada, sorry, go to Canada and stay where the healthy members of the family can take care of them, right? So, all this emotional stress, anxiety, you know,
Hmm.
possible problems at school, right? Not concentrating, you know, behavior uh, problems at school, right? Also, financial hardship. Let's say they're not from very rich communities, right? So they lose all this income from their parents if they have to be by themselves. I'm not just talking about young kids, talking about, you know, young adults too, you know, or just also adults, right?
Hmm.
Let's say my mother is 75 years old already. She has to be deported, right?
Hmm.
We're the ones who take care of her, right? So she's going back to, let's say, Argentina. Who's going to take care of her in there if there are no other members living in
Hmm.
Argentina? So many times the whole family has to go, you know, to a country they never lived before. Let's say the kids, for
Hmm.
instance, have to learn another language, get used to the customs and all, right? Sorry, to all this scenario that they're not in. Like, let's say they have to learn Spanish very fast because they lived in an English-speaking country, right? Access to benefits too. Let's say in the States, let's say they had free school for some reason because the dad worked for a company, right? Medicaid and all, right? They're not gonna have that in Chile if they have to go back, you know, to their own country, right? All this support, right, Simon, in my opinion, is the most important thing. The relocation is hard for everyone, let's say, because if they were in the States, even though they were undocumented, it's because they believed that the States was the best option for them. When they have to go back, in my opinion, kids are the ones who suffer the most. But sometimes, in my opinion, Simon, even though the parents were deported, right? Sometimes going to this new country, to this new nation, is going to be more beneficial to the kids because they have, someone to resort to take care of them, someone who loves them. Maybe if they lived in the States, right, living with a fostering family wouldn't be the best thing, or with a guardian, right? You never met a legal guardian, right? Wouldn't be like a good thing, right? In my opinion. But
Yeah, that's
it's
true.
very hard to answer this question to you, Simon.
Yeah, it's a very insecure situation for sure.